So, I'll just come right out and admit it, I'm a millennial. Yeah, I know. I left a pretty successful career in journalism to go to graduate school, and then I dropped out of grad school to do a crazy startup. It's a pretty typical millennial story, am I right? Now, we all know stories about millennials like me. We're self-absorbed, we're lazy, we're entitled, we don't want to pay our dues, we're spending all of our money on avocado toast. We're basically the worst, right? There's a little bit more to that story, and what I'm here to talk to you about today is how and why we're trying to shift perspective of local media and what it means for millennials and for the future of our cities. So, millennials are also the most educated generation in history and the most diverse. They're reinvigorating cities across the globe with demand for vibrant urban centers with efficient transit and affordable housing and co-working space and smart city infrastructure. They're completely transforming how we communicate, how we transact, how we move around. And they're definitely making an impact on our politics. Just think about the 2016 election, when an army of young conservative meme lords made viral Donald Trump memes, spread them across the internet like wildfire, and really helped him become a frontrunner. The same thing was happening on the left with Bernie Sanders, who got more votes from young people than Clinton and Trump combined. And think about the hashtags of the past year and how they are our politics now, from MAGA to Me Too, Resist to fake news. When it comes to business, every company now has to compete on very different terms thanks to millennials. It's all about authenticity and productivity. Or to put it in terms of things millennials really love, it's Amazon Prime versus artisanal pickles. So young people want things like great transit networks and walkability and bike shares because sitting in traffic is a total waste of time. And they really want to pick up a locally roasted pour-over at a pop-up coffee shop right by the train station. So all these changes require us to really rethink priorities and politics in our cities, right? And millennials, for all their communication know-how, they can have a really hard time communicating with bureaucracy. When it comes to building bike lanes, there's just no app for that. So what does this mean for local media? Well, a lot. Millennials are already changing the world and our cities in more ways than we give them credit for because they're doing it differently than humankind has ever known. And we're focused on just one small slice of that. As the future of political, social, and economic power concentrates in our growing cities, we want to help young people learn to lead where they live. And we want to work with governments and local institutions and organizations who are building the future of the city to really deeply engage these new networks, understand their perspectives, and include them in the work of building the future. So I want to talk to you about a couple of folks that we've worked with in Miami, just so you can know kind of what we're doing. One example is Ben. Ben's a minister, and he runs a nonprofit called Be Me Community. And it gives grants and leadership training and access to Black men who are changing their communities from the inside out. Be Me success stories include a guy who started a Black community marketplace after he spent some time in jail, a leading local lawyer, and a real estate developer who's working to build sustainability for Black-owned businesses. Ben's really focused on helping grassroots activists into the mainstream. We've also worked with Jessica. She's the past president of Miami Young Republicans, a second-generation Cuban-American, a free market believer, a true conservative in so many ways, but she's also holding her party to account on what she thinks are emerging issues. She recently organized a summit on climate change for Republican elected officials in Miami, and she was given an award by our local LGBT organization for her work promoting marriage equality. She's really invested in connecting traditional party politics with new, younger perspectives. When it comes to business, Natalia is a trailblazer. She runs one of the hottest co-working spaces in Miami, and she's a linchpin in our tech and entrepreneurship scene. She's a big-brained, big-hearted Harvard alum who's worked with major software companies, a foundation to bring innovation to Cuba, and right now, she's organizing a network of women funders to support and understand the needs of local women entrepreneurs. She's really interested in connecting a new kind of entrepreneur to the old guard. So what do these millennial leaders have in common? Well, first, they're really disruptive and they're entrepreneurial in spirit. They see holes in ecosystems and infrastructure, and they don't wait for permission. They just roll their sleeves up and get started trying to fix it. They're laser focused on a mission, right, that they attack from many, many angles. And they're radically collaborative, and they're radically networked. They give as much as they get. So when we think about what it means for a city, we need to understand that we can't tell people like this how to do stuff. We have to work directly with them. And so that's how we do. So when police shot Charles Kinsey, when he was on the ground with his arms raised in Miami, we didn't cover the police press conference. What we did was we called Ben. And Ben helped us organize a roundtable of BME community leaders who helped us understand what it's like to be a black man, a leading black man in our city, in a moment where we're undergoing a massive cultural shift in how we do policing of black communities. The conversation went on for over an hour, and to our surprise, no one trolled it. Experiments like this are teaching us that local media can be best at facilitating and framing conversation rather than just funneling information to the masses. The power of digital media isn't only in its massive distribution footprint, but also in its ability to bridge communities together. When we found out about how Florida's liquor laws were holding back our craft breweries, Jessica and the Young Republicans stepped in to help us make sense of it. They got this guy, Marcus, who's a home brewer and a lawyer, to write an essay explaining the issue from multiple angles, and then they invited everyone out to a brewery to meet local craft brewers and state politicians and talk about how we could help keep our beers on tap. In the end, the law was changed, and we did hear from a couple people who said they got involved in state politics for the first time because they could see exactly how it affected something that they really cared about. And sometimes that thing that they care about is beer. And hardcore political conversation isn't the only way to do civic leadership. Part of loving and leading a place is understanding what makes it tick. That's why we design experiences to help people understand their city through a new local lens. We took this group of city slickers down to South Dade in our agricultural hub, and we visited an orchid farm. We tasted fruit only grown in Miami, and we wound up on a family fish farm for a great barbecue. Experiences like this reinforce the idea that our city is more than the bustle of beach and downtown. It provides context to our local economy and to our politics. Local media can also be really effective at building connective infrastructure where lots of people are working in silos. Miami's startup scene is right now ranked #2 in the nation, and it's grown so quickly that it was often really hard for newcomers to find the information that they needed to plug in. So we worked with the community to make a startup guide to help them understand where to find co-working spaces and where to take coding classes and who the big networks of funders were in our community and how to connect with them. And we asked people like Natalia to step in and share their ideas about the opportunities and challenges that face us as we grow, things like tech equity and diversity and scaling up. If we shift our perspective on local media to be about empowering people to get invested in really leading the places that we live, what we're learning is that we can't just tell them. Everyone is media now, everyone with a smartphone. And our world is infinitely networked and infinitely fragmented, and for so many people, especially young people, that can be really confusing and overwhelming, and they often disengage when we need them to act. And so they have to learn how to do in the real world what they share online for any of it to matter. And they have to learn how to navigate bureaucracy in order to affect change. Now, for you grown folks in the room, the parents of the selfie generation, you guys learned this, and you learned it in very different circumstances. But I want you to give the selfie generation some credit, too. What they're doing isn't just about narcissism. It's about linking community and experience across space and time. It's about creating your own story instead of just consuming a story. And so when we make events, we design for selfies too. Because if local media wants to empower these people, we have to do it their way. And listening matters more than telling. Sharing beats seeing. And for this generation anyway, actions speak way louder with selfies. So tomorrow's mayors and business leaders and publishers are today's activists and startup entrepreneurs and social media influencers. They're people like Ben and Jessica and Natalia. And for those emerging leaders and the ones who are coming right after them, civics can sound a lot like homework. But you know what? Cities are fun. And so that's where we can start, where the power and the value of a new local media in our growing cities and in yours is in helping people connect and truly supporting their work, in cultivating meaningful conversation, and in inspiring action rather than just adding to the noise. It means leaning into people's digital habits to connect them to the real world, and it means helping them decode bureaucracy so that they can affect change. And unlike global or national media, local media can do this work with you, with your communities, with your people, on the ground and online. Local media can build your city with you, not for you. And as local media, and as a millennial, we need you to show us, to tell us, to help us live like you live here. Thanks.